All right, so I want to talk a little bit about evolution, natural selection, and mutual aid. I think a lot of people are familiar with evolution. Darwin popularized the concept of evolution and natural selection in the 1800s. You know, talks about how the fittest species will survive, and the fittest organisms within species, those traits that allow them to survive and procreate, will become more prevalent, and the traits within a species that are detrimental to its survival will disallow them to survive, and so the strongest will survive, that sort of thing. And then that's kind of like permeated the way people have come to think about nature altogether. It's like harsh out there. Only the strong will survive. Those sorts of things. Not too long after Darwin came out with this theory, it became pretty popular for big industrialists and powerful people. They liked the way it sounded and kind of used it for their own purposes. So if they're rich, no matter how they got rich, they're powerful, maybe they're more evolved, and so they're going to try to show, how they're more fit to survive, and the people working in their factories, they deserve what little they have, and all their character defects are signs that maybe they're less evolved or they're less worthy, and they have less potential altogether. Not long after Darwin came out with this theory, or popularized the theory, an anarchist named Peter Kropotkin started writing articles in the magazine The 19th Century, and he's basically talks about how evolution, or natural selection rather, isn't the only law that has helped species and animals and humans evolve throughout our history. There is this other concept called mutual aid, which is, people don't just try to dominate each other. Animals don't try to just dominate each other and always see who's strongest and subjugate one another. Mutual aid takes place too, and is arguably just as important. And furthermore, another term, just to kind of go back to how the powerful people were using these, and still to this day, it's kind of thought of in this way. You see people with bumper stickers and things like that say, Darwin, this and that about Darwinism, or you might see it online. Oh, well, this is natural selection taking its course. When somebody says something you don't agree with and you think it's maybe stupid or something like that, well, whatever. So I just kind of wanted to read the first paragraph of Kropotkin's article on mutual aid amongst modern men. He starts earlier with animals and kind of leads up to modern men. So it goes, mutual aid amongst modern men. The mutual aid tendency in man has so remote an origin and is so deeply interwoven with all the past evolution of the human race that it has been maintained by mankind up to the present time, notwithstanding all vicissitudes of history. It was chiefly evolved during periods of peace and prosperity, but when even the greatest calamities befell men, when whole countries were laid waste by wars and whole populations were decimated by misery or groaned under the yoke of tyranny, the same tendency continued to live in the villages and among the poorer classes in the towns. It still kept them together, and in the long run it reacted even upon those ruling, fighting, and devastating minorities which dismissed it as sentimental nonsense. And whenever mankind has had to work out a new social organization, adapted to a new phasis of development, its constructive genius always drew the elements and the inspiration for the new departure from that same ever-living tendency. New economical and social institutions, insofar as they were a creation of the masses, new ethical systems and new religions, all have originated from the same source, and the ethical progress of our race, viewed in its broad lines, appears as a gradual extension of the mutual aid principles from the tribe to always larger and larger agglomerations, so as to finally embrace one day the whole of mankind, without respect to its diverse creeds, languages, and races. These were the ideas developed in a series of preceding essays. I mean, it has its logic. I tend to agree with it. I mean, if you only understand natural selection, you're going to kind of see it everywhere, and you're going to, not see the full complexity of how species, yes, certain traits get passed on and are supported and are more fit for survival of the species. But at the same time, those individual organisms within the species need to support each other. And it's not just one attribute that is dominant or everybody has to have. It's complex, it's varied. It's like the sort of thing when people talk about it takes a village to raise a child. That's that sort of instinct that has helped as much as the inner traits, the inner genes that we are endowed with at birth. It's this instinct to take care of each other and to support each other within and across species. You see it. People don't just care about humans. They have empathy. People care about other species. They want to take care. They don't want people to suffer and be in pain. Not everybody is like that, but enough of us are that we support each other. We want to, have schools and teach each other, and have health care and people, supporting each other and caring about each other's interests, not just for your own gain, but for, the good of all of us and, our future and all that. So with all that said, that's basically all I really wanted to talk about. In the description, I'm going to post a link to, some relief efforts for the people in Northern California who are going through some horrible wildfires and have had their towns burned down, and people sleeping in Walmart parking lots. There's over 1,000 people missing. Many people have died. So it just feels like that's on my mind right now. And if I had money, I'd be contributing some to that cause too. And there's many other worthy causes out there, and it's that sort of thing that keeps us going. Not just competitive instinct and being over one another and trying to rise up, but supporting each other and seeing each other as equals and having equal value just as humans.